Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, reminding you to check out the cool merchandise at the ClassicsToday.com shop, where you can get this, among other fabulous t-shirts, and lots of other things. We got mugs, we got water bottles, we got, you name it, we have it. It's fabulous. Now, it's time for another episode of How It's Done. And today we are talking about one of your recommendations, another one of your recommendations that actually a surprising number of you came up with. And when a work is by a fairly not too well-known composer and a bunch of people all recognize it as special, you know that this is going to be really just rocking. And it truly, truly is. I'm talking about the opening of Bohuslav Martinu's Sixth Symphony, the Fantaisies Symphonique, the symphonic fantasy. And boy, it certainly is that. What a spacey piece of music this is. The beginning has this amazing, spooky, insectoid, exotic, somehow lush sound. I want to play it for you first, and then we'll take a look at it. We've got Bryden Thompson and the Royal Scottish National Orchestra on Chandos. This is my favorite Martinu Symphony cycle, and here is the opening of Symphony number 6. How does he do that? Well, we're going to find out. Here is the score. Poof! The score. In fact, I have to look at the score because I don't have it here. And while we're getting it ready here, I just want to say, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if I put up a score and say it's Mahler, I'm going to get just a ton of views. Millions of people are all going to tune in and watch because the name Mahler's there. And I understand. Mahler is fabulous. He was the greatest symphonic orchestrator out there. Certainly like after Haydn. He was amazing. But there are so many other things worth listening to. And if I say Martinu Symphony number 6, I'm going to get half the amount of traffic. And it bothers me because this is such great music. And I know that most of the people who would have enjoyed Mahler will enjoy Martinu. They will. So I want all of you who are watching, all the Martinuvians, to do me a favor. Get at least one or two other people to watch this and to listen to this incredible music. Because how else are we going to get the word out there? And for those of you who are doing that, thank you very much, and who want to know who Martinu was, let's be very, very clear. Let's do a little bio. His years were 1890 to 1959. Now, if you look at composers kind of in pairs, in the 19th century, the great Czech composers were Dvorak and Smetana. And in the 20th century, they were Janáček and Martinu. I mean, there were others. There was Joseph Suk, there was Vítězslav Novák, there's a bunch of them. But the really famous ones. And of them all, Martinu is still the least known. He was also the most prolific. He wrote lots and lots of music. And much of it is absolutely fantastic. He went through several periods, but his symphonies are all late works. They were written after he fled to the United States when the Nazis took Paris, and he wound up at Princeton University. And then after the war, he he went back and forth, but he started writing symphonies in the United States because there was a demand for symphonies from major symphony orchestras and from his colleagues in Europe who knew him, who knew who he was. He had a rather remarkable life. He was born in a clock tower. I mean, literally a clock tower, like 100 steps up every day, up and down to go home. His whole family lived in one room in the top of a clock tower. And that may have had something to do with his dreaminess, his characteristic of his music, its hallucinatory quality. I mean, if you spent your whole childhood staring over, looking out at the far horizon, over roofs and the Czech countryside, I think your music would be kind of fantastical too. And it often sounds that way. It has an unbelievably personal and unique sound, even from the earliest time, because he wound up in Paris, where he was involved with, the group of six and, the neoclassical revolution. So he wrote, concerti for every possible instrument, and his music was, that period was very, very rhythmic and usually very quick and detailed and quirky and full of jazz influences as well as Czech folk music. It's really extraordinary. An extraordinary guy. But when he came to write symphonies, he had by then matured into an amazing composer. And I've already done a video on his late orchestral works, which are not symphonies, but they're cut very much from the same cloth. Martinu was one of those composers who, once you know what he sounds like, it's as if he wrote one big giant piece of music and just cut it into different lengths and called them different things. But you know it's him. You always know it's him. And the Sixth Symphony is amazing because most of his symphonies have extensive parts for harp and for piano and for those instruments. But after the third symphony, the harp drops out. And after the Fifth Symphony, the piano drops out. And the Sixth is written for an orchestra that has very, very few odd instruments. It's triple woodwinds. That's 3 flutes, one of which doubles on a piccolo, 3 oboes, 3 bassoons, 3 clarinets, 4 horns, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, strings, timpani, and percussion. There's no contrabassoon, there's no English horn, there's no bass clarinet. There is nothing unusual or exotic in the instrumentarium. There's no piano, there's no celesta, there's none of that. But the sound of this symphony is the most extraordinary of all 6, and one of the most extraordinary. Well, you just heard it. I mean, what was that? How did he do it? Well, now we're going to find out. So here, bang, is the score. Now, those of you, like I said, you don't have to know how to read a score. You just have to know how to look at a score. You just have to stare at it. You don't have to know even what the notes are. You just have to know who's playing what, who's making the sound that you're hearing. And that will be enough for you to appreciate this. I just want to say one thing. In this particular score, there are 2 systems. See those little railroad tracks like that? They look like this, 2 lines like this between the 2 big chunks of music. That's a break. That means that you read from left to right on the top, then you skip to the bottom, and you read from left to right again. Because the way the score is organized is by groups of instruments, by their families, and then their pitches from high to low. So you get flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons. Then you get horns, trumpets, trombones, and tuba. Then you get timpani. Then you get miscellaneous percussion. Then you get all the strings, first and second violins, violas, cellos, and basses. And you get that twice on this one page because you have 2 complete systems. Now, let us start with that very first sound that we heard. That amazing sound. It sounds like the patter of rain on a windshield or on a roof. That sort of sound. It's not even a note. If you want to know what that thing is, because it stops very, very quickly, and then you hear sort of an emptiness where that was, and you hear the rest of the orchestra, the buzzing and whirring going on above it. That sound, you can see at the bottom left corner where you see the basses, contrabassi, it says. They're playing a simple tremolo. A tremolo is just. Let me take this down for a second. flap, it's down. A tremolo is this. When you see violins do this, really fast, back and forth on the string, they're doing this, like this. That's a tremolo. It's a very, very rapidly repeated note. And they're doing that, and they're playing it they're playing it, let me see, yes, sul ponticello. They're playing it on the bridge of the instrument. And the bridge of the instrument means, close up to where the string goes down across the instrument. And when you do it up there, you get a very metallic, wiry sound. It's a very odd sound. And that very odd sound is making that pitter-patter of rain kind of sound there. It's an extraordinary sound, just that little bit. But what else do we have happening here? Let us see. What you have is, initially, you've got 2 solo violins and 1 viola. You can see them up above the contrabasses, and they're just going, they're sort of buzzing around one note. And then on top of that, you'll see the trombones. It says trombe, Trombe. There are 3 of them. They're marked con sordino. That means with mutes. And they're just playing single notes. Like that. And then on top of that, even more, you have the flutes doing the same thing the violins are doing, alternating with the clarinets doing the same thing that the violins are doing. And then something marvelous happens. It's just extraordinary because they do that little business, and you can see for 1, 2, then you drop down to the second system, 3 bars, and then the violin parts, or something similar. It's not quite the same, but it's quite similar. The motion, the idea, is taken over by 3 solo bassoons. And those bassoons are going like that. It sounds like someone gargling, practically. And underneath that, the violins begin to play what seems to be the beginning of a theme in very long, calm, drawn-out notes. Ba-da-dum. That's all it is. Just a couple of notes, long notes, with the bassoons gurgling underneath. Those 2 textures alternate. And between the 2 of them, they will create the texture that dominates the introduction. This is the introduction to the first movement of the symphony, and it's as far as we can go, because that's basically all I can play you within the time frame that I have here. But believe me, you are going to want to hear the rest of how this symphony goes. And what is so fabulous about it is that there's nothing unusual about the choice of instruments. It's just flutes, clarinets, trumpets, bassoons, and strings. That's it. Let's listen to it again before we go. One more time. And with that, Martinu creates the most fantastical, extraordinary, evocative sounds, atmosphere, texture. It's like nothing else in the entire repertoire. It's an amazing, amazing piece of writing that I really hope that someday I'm going to take the whole piece apart and play lots of bits of it and whatnot. But this is just a taste, because it's such an amazing opening and something that you really owe it to yourself to sit down and listen to. The whole symphony's in 3 movements. It's only about half an hour long. It's not gonna stress you out in that sense. But my word, what a tense, twitchy, lyrically intense, amazing piece of music it is. So I just hope this little taste, this small taste, of the very opening of Martinu's Sixth Symphony, the Symphonic Fantaisies, has perked up your interest and given you the enthusiasm and inspiration to buy it or stream it or download it, anything you want to do, because I guarantee you're going to want to know how he does more of it. But as for the opening, just that little opening, that, my friends, is how it's done. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.